The clock had just struck 8 in the morning when the wrought iron gate of Hartley's Fine Pastries unlocked with a metallic click. Located in the heart of Oakwood Heights, the most affluent neighborhood of Riverdale, Connecticut, the Boutique Bakery stood as a beacon of luxury among designer boutiques and exclusive salons. The scent of freshly baked bread and delicate pastries wafted through the air as the first customers of the day crossed the threshold. Outside, leaning discreetly against a lamppost across the street, a boy watched in silence. His name was Tyler Johnson, and at 12 years old, he already understood the invisible boundaries that separated his world from the one he observed. Tyler had large, attentive eyes that seemed too old for his young face, skin dusted with a fine layer of dirt, and a tattered backpack slung over his narrow shoulders. The frayed edges of his too small jacket fluttered in the crisp autumn breeze. He knew he wasn't welcome in places like Hartley's, but hunger spoke louder than fear. 3 days had passed since his last proper meal, a sandwich from a church outreach program that visited the abandoned building where he'd been sleeping since his foster placement had fallen through. The social worker assigned to his case was overwhelmed, and Tyler had slipped through the cracks of the system once again. The pockets of his worn jeans held exactly 73 cents, not enough for even the simplest treat from the bakery, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the gleaming display window. Within minutes, the morning rush intensified. Sleek luxury cars pulled up to the curb, disgorging elegantly dressed patrons who strode confidently through the glass doors. Tyler noticed how the staff straightened their postures when these customers entered, their smiles widening, voices becoming more deferential. Through the large windows, he could see Maxwell Hartley himself, the imposing owner of the establishment. Mr. Hartley was a towering figure with silver-streaked hair, wearing an immaculate white chef's coat over pressed black pants. His voice carried authority, his gaze sharp and suspicious as it swept over his domain. Tyler had heard stories about Maxwell Hartley, how he had transformed a modest family bakery into the crown jewel of Oakwood Heights, how his pastries were featured in national magazines, how celebrities sometimes made special trips just to sample his famous cherry almond tarts. The man was a local legend, his name synonymous with success and excellence. But there were other whispers too, about his temper, his intolerance for mistakes, his disdain for those he considered beneath him. As Tyler watched, a young woman exited the bakery clutching a small pink box tied with a ribbon. The aroma that escaped when she opened the lid made Tyler's empty stomach contract painfully. He swallowed hard and took an involuntary step forward, drawn by hunger and curiosity. For just a moment, he allowed himself to imagine what it would feel like to walk through those doors, to be treated with the same respect as the other customers, to taste one of those delicate pastries that everyone coveted. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the street, and Tyler instinctively shrank back into the shadows. It wasn't that he had done anything wrong, not yet anyway, but experience had taught him that in neighborhoods like this, his very presence was often considered suspicious. To his surprise, the cruiser parked directly in front of Hartley's. A uniformed officer stepped out, and with him came a magnificent German shepherd with alert eyes and a purposeful stance. Tyler had seen police dogs before, but this one was especially impressive, tall and dignified, moving with fluid grace beside its handler. A small crowd of admirers immediately gathered around the dog, children asking permission to pet it, adults commenting on its beauty and training. "This is Ranger," the officer explained to the gathering crowd. "He's part of our new community outreach program. We're visiting local businesses today to build relationships and demonstrate canine capabilities." Maxwell Hartley emerged from the bakery, wiping his hands on a pristine towel. His smile was camera-ready as he greeted the officer. "Officer Collins, what a pleasure to have Riverdale's finest visiting us today." His voice carried across the street to where Tyler stood. "Please come in. I've just finished a batch of my special vanilla bean scones, on the house, of course, for our dedicated police force." Officer Collins smiled and followed Hartley inside, Ranger padding faithfully beside him. The shop was now buzzing with morning customers, and no one noticed when Tyler finally gathered his courage and crossed the street. He told himself he would just look closer, perhaps warm up for a few minutes in the heated entryway, before someone inevitably shooed him away. His heart pounded as he approached the gleaming storefront, its windows filled with artfully arranged displays of pastries that looked too perfect to be real. Inside, affluent customers sipped from delicate porcelain cups, the gentle clink of silverware against fine china creating a soundtrack of privilege. Tyler hesitated at the entrance, one hand on the polished brass door handle. Through the glass he could see the officer and his dog being treated like royalty, the owner himself bringing out special treats on a silver tray. Just as Tyler was about to turn away, knowing this world wasn't meant for him, the unexpected happened. The door swung open from inside, and a distracted woman with arms full of packages bumped into him. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, steadying herself. Before Tyler could respond, the woman was gone, hurrying toward a waiting car. But in that brief moment, the door had opened wide enough for Tyler to slip inside, into the warm, fragrant interior of Hartley's Fine Pastries. The heat enveloped him immediately, along with the intoxicating sense of butter, sugar, and spice. It was overwhelming after hours in the cold autumn air. Tyler stood frozen just inside the entrance, suddenly aware of how out of place he must look. His worn clothes and dirty face contrasted sharply with the pristine interior of the bakery, with its marble countertops and crystal chandeliers. He felt exposed, vulnerable, certain that at any moment someone would notice him and demand that he leave. But the shop was crowded, the staff busy with the morning rush. Tyler edged along the wall, moving toward a display case filled with tiny, jewel-like tarts. Each one was a work of art, topped with glazed fruits that gleamed under the recessed lighting. His stomach cramped painfully at the sight. From his position, Tyler could see into the back room where Maxwell Hartley was entertaining Officer Collins and Ranger. The dog sat attentively at his handler's side, his intelligent eyes sweeping the room periodically. For a brief moment, those eyes locked with Tyler's, and the boy felt a strange connection with the animal, a recognition of sorts, though he couldn't have explained what it meant. A harried-looking employee approached Tyler, suspicion clouding her features. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone making it clear that she doubted he could afford anything in the shop. Tyler fumbled in his pocket and produced his 73 cents. Is there anything I can get with this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The employee's expression softened slightly, but before she could respond, a commotion erupted from the back of the shop. Maxwell Hartley's voice rose above the ambient noise. "Where are they? The special display trays for the governor's order, they're gone." The atmosphere in the bakery shifted instantly. Staff members froze, then began moving frantically, searching, behind counters and in cabinets. Tyler watched as Hartley's face reddened with anger. The trays in question were apparently quite valuable, custom-made silver platters, ordered specifically for an upcoming event at the governor's mansion. According to Hartley's increasingly loud explanations, they had been delivered just that morning and placed in the display case nearest to the door. The display case right next to where Tyler now stood. Hartley's gaze swept the shop and landed on Tyler. His eyes narrowed, his expression hardening into something ugly and determined. With a finger pointed directly at the boy, he shouted words that would change everything. "Thief, he must have taken them!" Chaos erupted instantly. Customers gasped and drew back, creating a circle of empty space around Tyler. The accusation hung in the air like a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Tyler felt his chest constrict, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I didn't take anything," he stammered, his voice cracking, but his protest was drowned out by the rising murmurs of the crowd. Maxwell Hartley advanced toward him, each step deliberate and threatening. "Empty your backpack, boy," he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Now!" Tyler's hands trembled as he slipped the worn backpack from his shoulders. Inside were his only possessions: a threadbare sweatshirt, a dog-eared library book about astronomy, a half-empty water bottle, and a small photo of his mother, the only one he had, taken before she'd fallen ill and everything had changed. "See? Nothing," Tyler said, his voice small but desperate. "I didn't take anything, I just came in to get warm." Hartley's expression remained unmoved. "Check his pockets," he ordered one of his employees, a young man named Jake, who looked uncomfortable. but complied. Jake approached Tyler cautiously, as if the boy might bolt or attack. "Sorry, kid," he muttered as he patted Tyler's jacket pockets, finding nothing but the 73 cents. By now, the shop had gone completely silent. Even the clinking of cups had stopped as everyone watched the drama unfold. "He must have hidden them somewhere," Hartley insisted, his face flushing deeper, "or handed them off to an accomplice." He turned to Officer Collins, who had emerged from the back room with Ranger at his side. "Officer, I want this boy arrested for theft. Those trays are worth thousands." Officer Collins approached the situation with measured professionalism. At 34, David Collins was relatively new to the K-9 unit, but had quickly earned a reputation for fairness and good judgment. Unlike some of his colleagues, he didn't immediately assume guilt based on appearances. "Let's slow down here," he said calmly. "No one's getting arrested without evidence." He turned to Tyler, lowering himself slightly to meet the boy's eyes. "Son, what's your name?" "Tyler Johnson," the boy replied, his voice steadier now that someone was actually listening to him. "And I swear I didn't take anything. I just got here a minute ago." Officer Collins nodded thoughtfully. "Do you live nearby, Tyler?" The question hung in the air. Tyler hesitated, not wanting to admit that he had nowhere to go. "Not really," he finally said. "I'm between places right now." Understanding dawned in Officer Collins's eyes, but before he could respond, Maxwell Hartley interjected. "He's obviously homeless," he said dismissively. "Probably been casing my shop for days. I've seen him hanging around outside." He turned to address the watching customers. "This is exactly why I've been telling the council we need better security in this neighborhood. These people come in from the south side and think they can just take whatever they want." The ugliness of the accusation silenced the room once more. Even those who had been quick to believe Tyler might be guilty seemed uncomfortable with Hartley's naked prejudice. Tyler felt his face burn with shame and anger. The south side of Riverdale was predominantly home to working-class families, many of them minorities. Tyler had indeed been staying in an abandoned building there since leaving his last foster home, but Hartley's implication was clear and deeply offensive. Officer Collins' expression hardened slightly. "Mr. Hartley, let's focus on the missing items. When exactly did you last see these trays?" Hartley waved his hand impatiently. "They were delivered this morning around 7. I personally unpacked them and placed them in the display case by the door." He pointed to an empty shelf behind the counter. "Right there. Then I went to the kitchen to finish the governor's special order." The young woman in a Hartley's uniform tentatively raised her hand. "Actually, Mr. Hartley, I think I saw the trays after that, around 7:30 when I was setting up the register." Her name tag identified her as Melissa, and she looked nervous about contradicting her boss. Hartley glared at her. "Impossible, they were already missing by then." Melissa shrank back, clearly unwilling to argue further. Throughout this exchange, Tyler noticed that Ranger had been watching the proceedings with unusual intensity. The German Shepherd's intelligent eyes moved from person to person, his ears perked forward attentively. Now the dog's gaze fixed on Tyler, studying him with what almost seemed like curiosity. Then something unexpected happened. Ranger nudged Officer Collins's hand and whined softly. "What is it, boy?" the officer asked. Ranger padded over to Tyler and began to sniff him methodically, his shoes, his pants, his backpack. Tyler stood, perfectly still, afraid to move. He'd heard stories about police dogs attacking people, but Ranger's inspection was gentle, almost courteous. After a thorough investigation, the dog simply sat down beside Tyler and looked up at his handler. Officer Collins raised an eyebrow. "Interesting," he murmured. "Ranger doesn't seem to think." "Tyler has your missing trays, Mr. Hartley." Maxwell Hartley's face contorted with frustration. "That's ridiculous. The dog is obviously confused. I want this boy searched properly at the station if necessary." But Officer Collins shook his head. "Ranger is one of our best detection dogs, Mr. Hartley. If the trays were on this boy, Ranger would alert. That's what he's trained to do." He patted the dog's head proudly. "His nose is more reliable than most technology we have." The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for what happened next. Ranger suddenly stood, his attention captured by something else entirely. With purposeful steps, he moved away from Tyler and began to traverse the bakery. nose to the ground, clearly following a scent. The customers parted to make way for him, watching with fascination as the police dog conducted his own investigation. Ranger's path led him behind the main counter, into areas normally off-limits to customers. The staff exchanged nervous glances, but didn't dare interfere with a police dog. Officer Collins followed, as did Maxwell Hartley, whose expression had shifted from anger to unease. Tyler, uncertain what to do, remained where he was, though he noticed that the people around him had stopped looking at him with quite so much suspicion. Their attention was now fixed on the dog's mysterious quest. Ranger's search led him to a door marked Private Staff. Only? He scratched at it insistently, then looked back at Officer Collins with an unmistakable message. "Mr. Hartley, what's in there?" Officer Collins asked. Hartley's voice was strangely tight when he answered. "That's my private office. The dog has no business in there." "Ranger seems to disagree," Officer Collins replied mildly. "Would you mind opening it?" A tense silence followed. The entire bakery watched as Maxwell Hartley slowly extracted a key from his pocket and unlocked the door with visible reluctance. The moment the door opened, Ranger darted inside. The office was small but luxuriously appointed, with a mahogany desk and leather chair. Framed awards and magazine features covered the walls, all celebrating Hartley's culinary achievements. Ranger ignored all of this, making a beeline for a cabinet behind the desk. There he sat down and barked sharply. Once, twice, 3 times. Officer Collins approached the cabinet. "May I?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. With visible discomfort, Maxwell Hartley nodded. When Officer Collins opened the cabinet, everyone crowding around the office door gasped. There, wrapped carefully in soft cloth, were the missing silver trays. Ranger barked again, as if to say, "Case closed." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Maxwell Hartley, whose face had drained of color. "That's not," he stammered, but couldn't seem to form a coherent sentence. From his position near the front of the shop, Tyler could only see fragments of what was happening, but the sudden shift in the atmosphere was unmistakable. People were now looking at Hartley with the same suspicion that had been directed at Tyler moments before. Officer Collins' voice was professionally neutral, but tinged with disappointment. "Mr. Hartley, perhaps you'd like to explain how these trays ended up in your locked office when you claimed they were stolen." For a moment, it seemed Hartley might continue to deny any knowledge, but then his shoulders sagged. "It was a mistake," he muttered. "I must have moved them for safekeeping and forgotten. With the governor's event coming up, I've been under tremendous pressure." But even as he offered this explanation, his eyes darted nervously around the room, refusing to meet anyone's gaze directly. Officer Collins didn't look convinced. "A strange coincidence that you'd forget, and then immediately accuse the first unfamiliar face in your shop." He turned to Jake, the employee who had searched Tyler. "Has anything like this happened before?" Jake hesitated, glancing nervously at his employer. Maxwell Hartley's face had turned an alarming shade of red, his eyes silently warning the young man to choose his next words carefully. But Ranger's discovery had shifted the power dynamics in the room, and Jake seemed to find courage in that. "It's happened before," he admitted quietly. 3 times in the past year. Items went missing and Mr. Hartley accused customers. Usually people who—" He paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. "Who didn't look like they belonged in Oakwood." Heights? A collective murmur rippled through the onlookers. Someone near the back of the crowd muttered, "I knew it," loudly enough to be heard. Officer Collins maintained his professional demeanor, but his expression had hardened. "I see," he said simply, then turned to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd appreciate it if you could clear the area while we sort this out. The bakery will be closed temporarily." Despite protestations from those who hadn't yet received their orders, the authority in Officer Collins's voice had the desired effect. The customers began to file out, many casting backward glances at the unfolding drama. Melissa, the employee who had earlier contradicted Hartley about the timing, approached Officer Collins hesitantly. "There's something else you should know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The security cameras. Mr. Hartley told us they were broken last week, but I saw him turn them off this morning. This revelation sent another shockwave through the remaining staff. Maxwell Hartley's face contorted with fury. That's a lie. You're all conspiring against me. This is outrageous. His composure had completely shattered. I built this business from nothing. I won't be undermined by my own employees. Officer Collins raised a calming hand. Mr. Hartley, please lower your voice. We're going to check those security cameras now. He turned to another officer who had arrived as backup. Officer Mitchell, please escort Mr. Hartley to the front of the shop while we review the footage. As Hartley was led away, still protesting his innocence, Officer Collins approached Tyler, who had remained frozen near the entrance, unsure whether he was allowed to leave. "You okay, son?" Collins asked, his tone gentler than it had been with Hartley. Tyler nodded mutely, though in truth he felt far from okay. The adrenaline that had kept him upright during the accusation was beginning to fade, leaving him shaky and exhausted, and hungry, painfully, achingly hungry. As if reading his thoughts, Officer Collins reached into his pocket and pulled out the vanilla bean scone that Hartley had given him earlier. "Here," he said, offering it to Tyler. "Looks like you could use this more than I can." Tyler hesitated only briefly before accepting the pastry. The first bite was like nothing he'd ever tasted. Buttery, sweet, with a complex vanilla flavor. That seemed to fill his entire being. For a moment, he forgot about the drama surrounding him, lost in the simple pleasure of food after too long without. Ranger sat beside his handler, watching Tyler eat with what seemed like approval in his intelligent eyes. When Tyler had finished, Officer Collins asked gently, "Tyler, you mentioned you're between places. Can you tell me more about that? Where are your parents?" The question brought Tyler crashing back to reality. He swallowed hard. "My mom got sick 2 years ago, cancer. She couldn't get better." Tyler avoided using the word died, as if not saying it could somehow make it less real. "I don't know who my dad is. After Mom, I went into foster care, but my last placement didn't work out. They had their own kids, and I guess I was just extra." He shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant about what had been a devastating rejection. "I've been staying in different places. The social worker knows, but she says there's a shortage of homes right now." Officer Collins' expression reflected both concern and a growing resolve. "How long have you been on your own?" "About 3 weeks this time," Tyler admitted. "I'm fine, though. I know how to take care of myself." Even as he said it, Tyler knew how hollow the words sounded. His dirty clothes, the dark circles under his eyes, and his obvious hunger told a different story. By now, Officer Mitchell had returned with news about the security cameras. "They're operational," he confirmed, "and we've got footage from this morning. You're going to want to see this." Officer Collins nodded. "Tyler, wait here with Ranger for a minute, okay? He'll keep you company." As if understanding the instruction, Ranger sat down next to Tyler, his warm presence oddly comforting. Left alone with the dog, Tyler tentatively reached out to pet him. Ranger leaned into the touch, his tail sweeping the polished floor in slow, dignified wags. "Thanks for believing me," Tyler whispered to the dog, when no one else did. Ranger looked up at him with those knowing eyes, and Tyler felt a lump form in his throat. It had been a long time since anyone, human or animal, had shown him such unconditional trust. Meanwhile, in the back office, Officers Collins and Mitchell were reviewing the security footage with several of Hartley's employees. The video, clearly, showed Maxwell Hartley arriving early that morning, unpacking the silver trays from their delivery box, and then, after glancing furtively around to ensure he was alone, carrying them into his office. Later footage captured him emerging from the kitchen, casually scanning the shop floor, and then loudly discovering that the trays were missing. It was all there in black and white, a deliberate deception, a calculated attempt to create a scene and place blame on an easy target. When Officer Collins returned to the front of the shop, his expression was grim. Tyler could tell immediately that whatever he had seen on the security footage had confirmed the worst suspicions. "Well, Tyler," Collins said, "it looks like you're completely cleared. Mr. Hartley staged the whole thing. Despite the vindication, Tyler felt no triumph, only a deep weariness. Why would he do that? I never did anything to him. Officer Collins sighed. Sometimes people do cruel things for reasons that have nothing to do with their targets. From what we can piece together, Mr. Hartley has been using these thefts to file fraudulent insurance claims. He reports items stolen, collects the insurance money, but keeps the items hidden away to sell later through private channels. He placed a gentle hand on Tyler's shoulder. What happened today wasn't about you. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe the right place at the right time, since you helped expose what's been going on. The bakery had emptied of customers by now, but word of the morning's events was spreading rapidly through Oakwood Heights. Through the glass doors, Tyler could see people gathered on the sidewalk, some openly filming with their phones. Local defile. News vans had begun to arrive, reporters setting up equipment with the efficiency of those accustomed to covering breaking stories. Maxwell. Hartley was being escorted to a police cruiser, no longer shouting but pale and defeated. As he passed Tyler, he didn't even glance in the boy's direction, as if Tyler had become invisible now that he was no longer useful as a scapegoat. Officer, Collins was speaking into his radio, requesting social services for Tyler. We'll get you somewhere safe tonight, he promised, and we'll sort out a better long-term situation. No more abandoned buildings. Tyler nodded, too overwhelmed to argue or even ask questions about what would happen next. His entire world had been upended in the space of a morning, first for the worse, then for the better. It was too much to process. A woman approached them, her press badge identifying her as Sarah Lawrence from the Riverdale Chronicle. "Officer Collins," she called, "can you comment on what's happening here?" Before Collins could respond, another figure pushed through the gathering crowd, a tall African-American woman in her 50s with close-cropped silver hair and an air of quiet authority. "Tyler," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Tyler Johnson?" Tyler looked up in surprise. "Ms. Walker?" Diane Walker was the director of New Horizons, a local non-profit that ran youth programs in the south side of Riverdale. Tyler had attended their after-school sessions sporadically before his mother's illness had upended their lives. Ms. Walker strode purposefully toward them, ignoring the reporters who tried to intercept her with questions. "I was at the community center when I heard what was happening," she explained, slightly out of breath. "Someone recognized your description from the news alert." She looked Tyler up and down, taking in his disheveled appearance with concern, but no judgment. "Oh, child, why didn't you come to us? We would have helped you." Tyler dropped his gaze to the floor. "I didn't want to be a burden. And after Mom, it was hard to go back to the places we used to go together." Ms. Walker's expression softened with understanding. "You could never be a burden, Tyler. Your mother was a volunteer with us for years. Your family." She turned to Officer Collins. "I'm Diane Walker, Executive Director of New Horizons Youth Center. We have a transitional housing program for teens in crisis. Tyler can come with me right now if that works for your protocols." Officer Collins looked relieved. "That would be ideal, Ms. Walker, assuming Tyler is comfortable with the arrangement. We'll still need to file reports with social services, but having a stable placement immediately would be the best outcome." He glanced at Tyler questioningly. Tyler felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest, the first he'd experienced in longer than he could remember. "I'd like that," he said softly, "if it's really okay." "More than okay," Ms. Walker assured him. "We have a room ready, meals provided, and support services to help you get back on your feet, including finishing school," she added with a knowing look that made Tyler smile despite himself. His attendance had been spotty at best since he'd been on his own. As they prepared to leave, Ranger nudged Tyler's hand with his nose, as if asking for one last pat. Tyler obliged, scratching behind the dog's ears. "Thanks again," he whispered. Officer Collins watched the interaction with interest. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "Ranger doesn't usually take to people this quickly. He's got good instincts about character." He seemed to make a decision. "The K9 unit does regular visits to schools and community centers as part of our outreach program. Maybe we could add New Horizons to our schedule." Ms. Walker's face lit up. That would be wonderful. Our kids would love it. She looked at Tyler. And I think we have at least one young man who might benefit especially from continuing this friendship. For the first time since the morning's chaos had begun, Tyler felt something like genuine joy bubble up inside him. The idea of seeing Ranger again, of perhaps even learning more about police dogs and their training, sparked an interest he hadn't felt in months. As they prepared to leave Hartley's Fine Pastries, likely for the last time, given the serious charges its owner now faced, Tyler noticed the reporters still clustered outside. One of them called out, "Is that the boy who was falsely accused? Can we get a statement?" Tyler instinctively shrank back, but Officer Collins placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to talk to them if you don't want to," he said. "But sometimes telling your story can help others. It's entirely up to you." Tyler considered this. For so long he had felt invisible, a shadow passing through the lives of others without leaving a mark. But today, his presence had mattered. His truth had been worth fighting for, worth believing in. Maybe his voice could matter too. After a moment's hesitation, Tyler nodded. "I'll talk to them," he said, his voice quiet but determined. "Just stay with me." Officer Collins and Ms. Walker flanked him protectively as they stepped outside to face the gathered media. The morning sun had fully emerged now, bathing Oakwood Heights in golden light that seemed at odds with the drama that had unfolded within Hartley's Fine Pastries. Ranger padded alongside them, his presence lending Tyler additional courage. Sarah Lawrence from the Riverdale Chronicle stepped forward first, her expression kind but professional. "Tyler, can you tell us what happened inside?" she asked, holding a recorder toward him. Tyler took a deep breath and began to speak. His voice grew stronger with each word as he recounted the morning's events, how he had been wrongfully accused, how Ranger had revealed the truth, and how Mr. Hartley's deception had ultimately been exposed. He didn't embellish or exaggerate, simply told what had happened as he had experienced it. When he finished, Sarah asked, "How do you feel about Mr. Hartley now?" It was a loaded question, designed to elicit an emotional response that would make for a compelling headline. Tyler thought carefully before answering. "I feel sad for him," he said finally. "He had everything, a successful business, respect in the community, and he risked it all to frame someone who had nothing. I don't understand that kind of choice." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and even the most cynical reporters seemed moved by his response. There was a flurry of additional questions, but Officer Collins soon stepped in. "That's enough for now," he said firmly. "Tyler's had a difficult morning and needs rest." As they moved away from the media scrum, an unexpected figure approached. Jake, the young employee who had reluctantly searched Tyler earlier. He had changed out of his Hartley's uniform into casual clothes and carried a small cardboard box. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for what happened in there, for not standing up sooner." Tyler shrugged. "You were just doing your job." "Not well enough," Jake said, regret evident in his voice. "Anyway, we all chipped in." He handed Tyler the box. "It's not much, but we thought you might like it." Inside was an assortment of pastries, croissants, cookies, tarts, and small cakes, each carefully wrapped in wax paper. "The shop's closed indefinitely while they investigate Mr. Hartley," Jake explained. "These would just go to waste otherwise." Tyler was touched by the gesture. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "Would you like to share them?" he asked, looking around at Officer Collins, Ms. Walker, and even Ranger, who was eyeing the box with undisguised interest. Jake smiled, the first genuine smile Tyler had seen from him. "Actually, I'd like that, and I think there's something else you should know." He lowered his voice. "We've been talking, the staff, I mean. If the bakery reopens under new management, we want to start a program where leftover pastries get donated to shelters and youth centers at the end of each day. No more throwing away good food while people go hungry." Ms. Walker's eyes lit up. "New Horizons would be happy to help coordinate that effort," she said immediately. "We already have distribution networks in place for our food security program." As they shared the pastries in the autumn sunshine, a small crowd of supportive community members gathered around them. Word had spread quickly about what had happened, and many were eager to express their outrage at Hartley's behavior and their support for Tyler. An elderly woman pressed a $20 bill into his hand. A middle-aged man in a business suit handed Ms. Walker his card, offering pro bono legal services to ensure Tyler's placement with New Horizons went smoothly. A teenage girl about Tyler's age approached shyly to tell him she thought he was brave. By the time they finally departed for New Horizons, Tyler felt overwhelmed in an entirely new way, not by fear or hunger or uncertainty, but by the sudden outpouring of human kindness. The contrast with his recent experiences was so stark that it almost didn't feel real. "Is this really happening?" he whispered to Miss Walker as they walked toward her car. She squeezed his shoulder gently. "It is, and you deserve every bit of it." The drive from Oakwood Heights to the south side took less than 15 minutes, but it might as well have been a journey between different worlds. The manicured lawns and boutique storefronts gave way to more modest neighborhoods, where chain-link fences surrounded small yards and convenience stores occupied street corners instead of artisanal coffee shops. Yet Tyler felt his tension easing with every block they traveled. This was familiar territory, closer to the life he had known before everything fell apart. New Horizons Youth Center occupied a renovated warehouse on Maple Street. The brick exterior had been painted with vibrant murals depicting young people engaged in various activities: playing basketball, reading, creating art, working with computers. A large sign above the entrance proclaimed, "Building Futures Together Since 1997. As they pulled into the parking lot, Tyler noticed a flurry of activity around the building. Teenagers were coming and going, some carrying backpacks, others sporting athletic equipment. Adult staff members supervised discreetly, their interactions with the youth marked by easy familiarity and mutual respect. Inside, the center was even more impressive. The industrial bones of the warehouse remained visible in the high ceilings and exposed ductwork, but the space had been thoughtfully divided into various zones: a computer lab, a library corner with comfortable seating, a kitchen and dining area, art studios and what appeared to be classrooms. Everything was colorful, well-maintained, and clearly designed with young people in mind. "We've expanded quite a bit since you were last here," Ms. Walker explained, noting Tyler's wide-eyed expression. "Grant funding and community partnerships have allowed us to offer more comprehensive services." She led him through a door marked Residential Wing. "This is our newest addition, transitional housing for youth ages 12 to 18 who need temporary or long-term placement." The hallway was lined with doors, each painted a different color and personalized with nameplates. The space somehow managed to feel both secure and welcoming, institutional and homey at the same time. Ms. Walker stopped at a door painted forest green. "This one's yours," she said, handing Tyler a key. "Take some time to get settled. Bathroom is through that door. There are fresh towels and toiletries waiting for you. When you're ready, come find me in my office and we'll talk about next steps." Left alone in his new room, Tyler stood motionless for several minutes, simply absorbing his surroundings. The space was small but thoughtfully arranged, with a twin bed covered in a blue comforter, a desk and chair, a dresser, and a small closet. A window overlooked a community garden behind the building. On the desk sat a welcome basket containing notebooks, pens, a water bottle, and, to his astonishment, a prepaid cell phone with a note explaining it was for emergency contacts and staying in touch with program staff. The contrast with the abandoned building where he'd been sleeping was so extreme that Tyler felt tears threatening. He blinked them back, embarrassed even with no one to witness his emotion. After a long, hot shower, his first in weeks, and a change into clean clothes provided by the center, Tyler felt like a different person. The face that looked back at him from the bathroom mirror was still thin, still bearing the signs of his recent hardships, but somehow transformed. There was color in his cheeks again, and something like hope in his eyes. When he emerged from his room, he found Ms. Walker waiting in the hallway. "Better?" she asked with a knowing smile. Tyler nodded. "Much better. Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me yet," she replied with a wink. "We've got work to do, but first lunch. You must be starving." The dining area was bustling with activity. Younger children sat at tables under the supervision of staff members, while teenagers served themselves from a buffet line, offering a surprisingly varied selection of food. Tyler filled his plate with roasted chicken, rice, and vegetables, then hesitated, unsure where to sit. "Tyler, over here!" The call came from a table near the window, where a group of teens about his age were waving him over. Among them was the girl who had approached him outside Hartley's to tell him he was brave. Up close, he could see that she had warm brown skin, curly hair pulled back in a colorful headband, and a smile that immediately put him at ease. "I'm Zoe," she said as he sat down. "And this is Marcus, Elijah, and Amara." She gestured to the others at the table. "We all live in the residential wing too. Welcome to Hotel New Horizons, where the room service is questionable, but the company is excellent." Her teasing tone made it clear that despite her complaints, she held the center in high regard. "You're already famous, you know," Marcus added, showing Tyler his phone screen, which displayed a local news website. The headline read, "Bakery owner arrested after K9 officer exposes frame-up of homeless teen." Accompanying the article was a photo of Tyler, standing between Officer Collins and Ms. Walker, with Ranger sitting attentively beside them. "The internet is calling you K9 Kid," Elijah chimed in. "It's trending locally." Tyler felt his face grow warm. "I didn't do anything," he protested. "It was all Ranger." "That's not how I heard it," Amara said quietly. She had been watching Tyler with thoughtful eyes. "Ms. Walker says you stood your ground even when everyone was against you. That takes courage." Before Tyler could respond, a commotion at the entrance to the dining hall caught everyone's attention. Officer Collins had arrived, still in uniform, with Ranger by his side. The younger children immediately swarmed around the dog, their excited voices filling the room. Collins spotted Tyler and made his way over, navigating through the crowd of admirers that followed Ranger, wherever he went. "Just checking in," he said, taking a seat at their table. "Wanted to make sure you're settling in okay." "I am," Tyler confirmed. It's really nice here." The inadequacy of the words frustrated him, but Officer Collins seemed to understand what he couldn't articulate. "Good. I filed all the necessary reports. Your social worker, Ms. Patel, will be visiting tomorrow to start the formal process of updating your placement status." He hesitated, then added, "I also wanted to let you know that the investigation into Maxwell Hartley is expanding. It turns out the fraudulent insurance claims were just the tip of the iceberg. He's been implicated in a larger scheme involving counterfeit luxury goods being sold through his bakery as a front." Tyler's eyes widened. "Counterfeit pastries?" Collins laughed. "No, though that would be an interesting crime. He was using the bakery's reputation and exclusive clientele to sell fake designer watches, jewelry, and handbags. The display trays you were accused of stealing were actually part of that operation. They had hidden compartments for transporting the counterfeit items." The revelation stunned the table into momentary silence. "So if Tyler hadn't gone into the bakery today," Zoe began. "And if Ranger hadn't been there," Marcus continued. "Hartley might have continued his operation indefinitely," Collins finished. "Sometimes justice works in mysterious ways." He smiled at Tyler. "Which brings me to another reason for my visit. The department is planning a commendation ceremony for Ranger next week. His work today was exceptional, even by his high standards. We'd like you to be there, Tyler, as an honored guest." The invitation took Tyler completely by surprise. "Me? But I didn't do anything." "You did everything," Collins corrected gently. "You stood your ground. You trusted the process when you had every reason not to, and you showed remarkable compassion afterward, even towards someone who tried to harm you. Those are qualities we value highly in the Riverdale Police Department." He glanced at Ranger, who had settled contentedly at his feet. "And I think Ranger would appreciate having you there. He's taken quite a liking to you." As if in confirmation, the German Shepherd lifted his head and gave a soft woof that made everyone at the table laugh. Tyler felt a warm glow spread through him, a feeling of belonging that had been absent from his life for far too long. "I'd be honored," he said simply. As Officer Collins and Ranger prepared to leave, promising to return for the regular K9, Demonstration the following week, Ms. Walker approached their table. "Tyler, when you're finished with lunch, I'd like to discuss your educational plans. We need to get you re-enrolled in school as soon as possible." The prospect would have filled Tyler with dread just days ago, but now he found himself nodding eagerly. "I'd like that. I've missed a lot, though." "That's what our after-school tutoring program is for," Zoe interjected. "I'm actually one of the peer tutors. I could help you catch up." Her offer was casual but kind, and Tyler felt that strange, unfamiliar warmth again, the sensation of being welcomed, of being seen as someone worth helping, rather than a problem to be solved. As the afternoon progressed, Tyler was introduced to the various programs New Horizons offered: academic support, vocational training, arts and music, sports and mental health services. He met with a counselor who would be working with him regularly to process his experiences and develop coping strategies for the trauma he'd endured. By evening, his head was spinning with information and new faces, but in the best possible way. After dinner, the residents gathered in the common room for what Ms. Walker called family meeting, a daily check-in where announcements were made, concerns addressed, and achievements celebrated. To Tyler's embarrassment, his arrival was the first item on the agenda, with Ms. Walker providing a brief, privacy-respecting explanation of the circumstances that had brought him to New Horizons. "And we're very glad to have him join our community," she concluded, leading a round of applause that made Tyler want to sink through the floor and float above it simultaneously. When the meeting concluded, Tyler found himself surrounded by his new housemates, all eager to include him in their evening routines. Some were heading to the computer lab to finish homework, others to the gym for basketball, still others to the art studio for an informal drawing session. For the first time in months, Tyler had choices, meaningful ones, about how to spend his time. And for the first time in even longer, he had people who cared what he chose. As he followed Zoe, Marcus, and Amara to the library corner, where they planned to introduce him to their favorite books, Tyler caught sight of his reflection in a window. The face looking back at him was transformed not just by the shower and clean clothes, but by something deeper, a fundamental shift in how he saw himself and his place in the world. In the space of a single day, he had gone from invisible to seen, from disposable to valued, from alone to surrounded by potential friends. All because of a false accusation, a perceptive dog, and people willing to look beyond appearances to discover truth. Tyler couldn't help but smile at his reflection. This wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning. 5 years later, the sun was just beginning to warm the June morning as Tyler Johnson, now 17, jogged along the familiar path through Riverdale Park. Beside him ran a sleek German shepherd, grey now speckling his muzzle, but still moving with impressive energy for his age. "Come on, Ranger," Tyler encouraged as they rounded the final bend. "Almost there, old friend." It had become their Saturday ritual. Early morning runs followed, by breakfast at Zoe's family's diner. Ranger had officially retired from police work 2 years ago, and when Officer Collins had been promoted to K-9 Unit Supervisor, he'd made an unprecedented decision to let Ranger live out his retirement years with Tyler at New Horizons. The arrangement had required special permissions and paperwork, but no one could deny the extraordinary bond between the boy and the dog who had changed his life. They slowed to a walk as they approached the entrance to Sweet Beginnings, the diner that had become Tyler's favorite spot in Riverdale. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully as they entered, and Zoe looked up from where she was filling salt shakers, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Right on time," she called. "Your usual table is ready." Their usual table was in the corner where Ranger could settle comfortably without blocking the aisle. A water bowl was already waiting for him, another sign of how routine this visit had become. Tyler slid into the booth, gratefully accepting the glass of orange juice Zoe placed before him. "How's the college application going?" she asked, refilling his water glass without being asked. Tyler's face lit up. "I submitted it last night. Early decision for Riverdale University's Veterinary Sciences program." "They'd be crazy not to accept you," Zoe said confidently, "especially with your internship experience at the K-9 Training Center." Her confidence in him had been unwavering since that first day at New Horizons, when she'd offered to help him catch up in school. What had begun as peer tutoring had blossomed over the years into a deep friendship and, more recently, something that felt increasingly like romance, though neither of them had put a label on it yet. "Collins says the same thing," Tyler admitted, "but I'm still nervous. It's competitive." Officer Collins, now Sergeant Collins, had become a mentor to Tyler, involving him in community outreach programs with the K9 unit and eventually helping him secure an internship with the department's dog trainers. Tyler's natural affinity, with animals first displayed with Ranger, had developed into a passionate interest in veterinary medicine, particularly for working dogs. "Speaking of Collins," Zoe said, glancing at her watch, "isn't the ceremony at 11? Tyler nodded. "That's why we did our run early today. I need to be there by 10 to help set up." The ceremony in question was the annual K9 Heroes event, established 4 years ago to honor police dogs for exceptional service. It had grown from a small departmental affair into a community-wide celebration with demonstrations, educational booths, and activities for families. This year was special. Ranger was receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Tyler had been asked to present it. "I still need to pick up my suit from the cleaners," he remembered suddenly. "Don't worry," Zoe said with a grin. "Ms. Walker already grabbed it yesterday. It's waiting in her office." Tyler shook his head in amazement. "What would I do without... Are you too?" "Probably starve and show up to important events in gym clothes," Zoe teased, setting a plate of blueberry pancakes, his favorite, in front of him. "Now eat up. Big day ahead." As Tyler dug into his breakfast, his mind drifted back over the 5 years that had passed since that fateful morning at Hartley's Fine Pastries. So much had changed. The bakery itself had indeed reopened, but under entirely new management. A cooperative of former employees led by Melissa and Jake had pooled their resources to purchase the business after Hartley's assets were liquidated following his conviction. They had renamed it Community Bread and implemented the donation program Jake had mentioned, ensuring that no good food went to waste while people in Riverdale went hungry. The cooperative had even opened a second location in the South Side, creating jobs and bringing high-quality baked goods to an area previously underserved by such businesses. Tyler himself had flourished at New Horizons. Miss Walker's steady guidance, combined with the structure and support the program provided, had helped him not only recover from his period of homelessness, but excel academically and personally. He had remained in the residential program until his 16th birthday, when he had transitioned to a supported independent living apartment within the complex, a step toward adulthood with the safety net of continued supervision and resources. His social worker, Ms. Patel, had worked tirelessly to locate any extended family who might take custody of Tyler. Eventually, they had found his mother's cousin in Seattle, but after careful consideration of Tyler's stability and progress at New Horizons, all parties had agreed that it was best for him to remain in Riverdale. The cousin visited twice a year and had become an important connection to Tyler's family history, sharing stories and photos of his mother that he had never heard or seen. After finishing his pancakes, Tyler checked the time. "I should get going," he said reluctantly. "I promised Marcus I'd help him set up the New Horizons booth before the ceremony." Marcus, who had been one of Tyler's first friends at the center, now worked there full-time as a youth counselor after completing his associate's degree in social work. He often joked that Tyler had inspired his career choice. "If they could save your sorry behind, maybe I can help save others too." Zoe leaned across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'll see you there. Mom's letting me off at noon, so I'll be there for the actual ceremony." Her parents' diner had become another success story in Riverdale's evolving landscape. What had begun as a struggling family business had found new life through a partnership with Community Bread, which now supplied all their baked goods. The collaboration had been featured in regional business magazines as a model of community-centered entrepreneurship. Tyler and Ranger made their way back to New Horizons, where the center was already buzzing with activity. Volunteers were loading displays and materials for the K9 Heroes event into vans, coordinated by Amara, who had parlayed her organizational skills into a full-time position as New Horizons volunteer coordinator after graduating high school the previous year. "There you are," she called when she spotted Tyler. "Ms. Walker's looking for you. Something about a surprise." Tyler found Ms. Walker in her office, still the calm center in the whirlwind of activity that was New Horizons. At 55, Diane Walker remained as energetic and dedicated as she had been 5 years ago, though she now spoke openly about her plans to eventually pass the executive director role to a younger leader, potentially someone who had come through the program themselves. "Tyler," she greeted him warmly. "Perfect timing. Your suit is there." She pointed to a garment bag hanging on her door. "And this arrived for you this morning." She handed him a large envelope bearing the seal of Riverdale University. Tyler's heart leapt into his throat. "Already? I just submitted the application yesterday." Ms. Walker smiled enigmatically. "Perhaps you should open it." With trembling fingers, Tyler broke the seal and pulled out the contents. A formal letter on university letterhead. "Dear Mr. Johnson," he read aloud, "we are pleased to inform you of your acceptance to Riverdale University's Early Admission Veterinary Sciences program on a full academic scholarship." He trailed off, unable to continue as emotion overwhelmed him. "But how?" he finally managed. "Early decision results aren't supposed to come for months." Ms. Walker's smile widened. "The university has established a new scholarship specifically for graduates of programs like New Horizons. It's called the Second Chance Scholarship, and you're the inaugural recipient. Sergeant Collins may have put in a good word as well." She hesitated, then added more softly, "Your mother would be so proud of you, Tyler." The mention of his mother brought a familiar ache, but it was no longer the sharp pain it had once been. Time and therapy had transformed his grief into something he could carry without being crushed by it. "I hope so," he said quietly. "I think about her every day. She's with you in everything you do," Ms. Walker assured him. "Now go get changed. Your public awaits." The K9 Heroes event was held in Riverdale's Central Plaza, a beautifully landscaped space that connected the more affluent north side of town with the historically underserved south side. The symbolism wasn't lost on Tyler as he helped Marcus set up the New Horizons information booth. Their organization had been instrumental in bridging many of the divides in Riverdale over the past 5 years, advocating for more equitable resource distribution and creating programs that brought different communities together. By 11 o'clock, the plaza was filled with families, community leaders, and of course, dogs, both the highly trained K9 officers being honored and pets brought by attendees. A stage had been set up at one end, decorated with banners celebrating the unique partnership between human officers and their K9 colleagues. Tyler, now dressed in his suit, waited nervously backstage. Ranger sat beside him, impressively dignified in a special blue collar adorned with a medallion from his years of service. "You clean up nice," came a familiar voice, and Tyler turned to see Sergeant Collins approaching, resplendent in his dress uniform. "Not so bad yourself," Tyler replied with a grin. Their easy banter reflected the evolution of their relationship from authority figure and vulnerable youth to something closer to family. Collins had become a fixture at New Horizons, not just through the K9 program, but as a volunteer basketball coach and mentor. His wife often joked that he spent more time at the youth center than at home. "Nervous about your speech?" Collins asked, straightening Tyler's tie with a paternal gesture that might once have embarrassed the teenager, but now felt natural. "A little," Tyler admitted. "Public speaking isn't really my thing." "Just speak from the heart," Collins advised. "That's what people connect with anyway." The ceremony began with a presentation of colors and remarks from the mayor, a progressive woman who had won office 3 years ago on a platform of community unity and police reform. She spoke eloquently about the unique abilities of K9 officers and the special bond they shared with their handlers, then introduced the various awards to be presented. Tyler watched as current K9 teams were recognized for achievements ranging from locating missing children to detecting narcotics. Each demonstration of skill and dedication reminded him of that morning 5 years ago, when Ranger's keen nose and training had changed the course of his life. Finally, it was time for the Lifetime Achievement Award. The mayor returned to the microphone. Our final honor today goes to a very special K9 officer, one who has not only served this community with distinction for 8 years, but whose actions 5 years ago exposed a criminal operation and saved a young man from injustice. To present this award, I'd like to invite that young man, now a graduating senior and future veterinary student, to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tyler Johnson. The applause that greeted Tyler as he walked onto the stage, Ranger at his side, was overwhelming. He saw familiar faces in the crowd, Ms. Walker and the New Horizons staff, Zoe and her family, his teachers, his social worker, Ms. Patel, and many others who had been part of his journey. Even Jake and Melissa from Community Bread were there, waving enthusiastically. Tyler approached the microphone, his prepared speech suddenly inadequate for the emotion of the moment. He looked down at Ranger, who gazed back with unwavering trust and found his voice. 5 years ago, I was invisible, he began. I was hungry, homeless, and had lost faith that anyone would ever see me as more than a problem to be solved or a statistic to be managed. Then I met Ranger. He reached down to stroke the dog's head. Ranger didn't see a homeless kid or a potential criminal. He saw the truth, that I was innocent, that I deserved justice, that I mattered. His actions that day didn't just expose a crime. They showed an entire community what it means to look beyond appearances and preconceptions to find what's real. Tyler paused, gathering his thoughts. Since then, I've learned that second chances don't just happen. They're created by people who choose to see potential where others see problems. People like Sergeant Collins, who believed in me enough to let me work with the K9 unit. Like Ms. Walker and everyone at New Horizons, who showed me that my past doesn't have to define my future. Like the teachers who helped me catch up when I returned to school, and the friends who accepted me without judgment. His voice grew stronger. But it all started with Ranger. Her dog who did what he was trained to do, find the truth, and in doing so found me. Tyler turned to the plaque he was meant to present. This Lifetime Achievement Award honors Ranger's 8 years of service to Riverdale, the countless cases he helped solve, the lives he protected. But if you ask me, his greatest achievement was showing us all that sometimes justice comes in unexpected forms and heroes don't always walk on 2 legs. He knelt beside Ranger, officially presenting him with the award as cameras flashed and the crowd applauded. Ranger, with the dignity that had always characterized him, accepted the attention calmly, though his wagging tail betrayed his pleasure. As Tyler stood to conclude his remarks, he noticed something unexpected in the back of the crowd, a familiar face he hadn't seen in 5 years. Maxwell Hartley, older and somehow diminished, stood quietly watching the proceedings. After serving 3 years for fraud, falsifying police reports and selling counterfeit goods, he had been released on parole. Tyler had heard he was working at a restaurant in a neighboring town, starting over from the bottom. Their eyes met across the distance, and after a moment of hesitation, Tyler nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Hartley returned the nod, then turned and walked away. There was no anger in the exchange, no triumph or bitterness, just recognition of how their paths had crossed and diverged, changing both their lives irrevocably. Tyler returned his attention to the crowd. As I prepare to start college this fall, studying veterinary medicine with a focus on working dogs, I carry with me the lessons Ranger taught me, that integrity matters, that the truth eventually finds its way to light, and that sometimes the most powerful form of communication doesn't require words at all. He smiled down at the dog who had become his closest companion. Thank you, Ranger, for finding me when I was lost, and thank you, Riverdale, for giving both of us a second chance. The ceremony concluded with a demonstration by the current K9 teams, showcasing the skills that made these dogs such valuable partners in law enforcement. Afterward, as people mingled and visited the various booths set up around the plaza, Tyler found himself at the center of a small crowd. Former teachers congratulating him on his scholarship, younger New Horizons residents asking about his experiences with the K9 unit, community members expressing their pride in his achievements. It was a far cry from the invisibility he had described in his speech. Quite a turnout, Zoe commented as she joined him, having finished her shift at the diner. She looked beautiful in a summery yellow dress, her curly hair loose around her shoulders. "Everyone's here to see Ranger," Tyler said modestly. "I'm just the guy holding his leash." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Right. That's definitely why Ms. Walker invited the local newspaper to cover the event and made sure everyone knew about your scholarship." She bumped his shoulder playfully. "Face it, Johnson, you're an inspiration. The kid who went from homeless to hero." "I'm no hero," Tyler protested. "I just got lucky." "Lucky?" Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling years of hard work, determination, and overcoming trauma now? Lucky?" Before Tyler could respond, Ranger gave a soft woof and nudged his hand insistently. "I think someone needs a break from all this excitement," he said, grateful for the distraction. "I'm going to take him for a quick walk. Want to come?" They slipped away from the crowd, finding a quiet path that led to a small pond at the edge of the plaza. Ranger trotted ahead, occasionally looking back to ensure they were following. As they walked in comfortable silence, Tyler found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. From that terrifying morning at Hartley's to today's celebration, from isolation to community, from despair to hope. When they reached the pond, Ranger settled contentedly in the shade of a willow tree, and Tyler and Zoe sat on a nearby bench. "I got my acceptance letter too," Zoe said suddenly, "to Riverdale U's education program, full scholarship." Tyler's face broke into a delighted grin. "Zoe, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. "It was your big day. I didn't want to steal your thunder." "As if you could ever steal anything from me," Tyler said softly, reaching for her hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally, a gesture they had shared countless times over the years, but which now seemed to carry new meaning. "We're going to college together," he marveled. "Who would have thought?" "I did," Zoe said simply. "From that first day at New Horizons, when you were this skinny, terrified kid who still managed to stand up straight and look everyone in the eye, I knew you were going places." She squeezed his hand. "I'm just glad I get to go with you." As the afternoon sun filtered through the willow branches, casting dappled shadows across Ranger's resting form and illuminating Zoe's face with golden light, Tyler felt a sense of completion, of having come full circle from that desperate morning 5 years ago when he had stood outside a bakery window, hungry and alone. Now he had a future, a purpose, a community. He had Ranger and Zoe, Ms. Walker and Sergeant Collins, New Horizons and all it represented. He had, against all odds, found home. "What are you thinking about?" Zoe asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Tyler smiled, gazing out at the pond where ducks skimmed across the surface, leaving ripples that expanded in ever-widening circles. "I was just thinking that sometimes the worst days of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be." Ranger lifted his head at that moment, those wise eyes finding Tyler's, and it seemed to the boy, no, the young man, that the dog was nodding in agreement. Some truths, after all, didn't need words to be understood.